Good afternoon, everyone. Again, hello. Thank you so much for coming today to today's panel discussion called No Turning Back. My name is Valentina Dončević from Design Studio of Alternative, and on behalf of Paperspace Asia, I'm delighted to be your host for today's conversation, which looks at how new ways of working will shape the future planning paradigms, energy, and blueprint of Singapore's cityscape. There's also growing momentum for the Singapore government and companies alike to tackle climate change with a nationwide movement to advance the country's national agenda on sustainability. I would also like to say a big thank you to our online audience. We had over 150 attendees registered online. Thank you so much for being with us today. Today's panel discussion is the fourth that we have put together in conjunction with the exhibition that's taking place downstairs at level 1 of National Design Center. And it's currently taking place until day after tomorrow, this Thursday. This was put together by Paperspace Asia with support of Design Singapore Council. We also would like to say a big thanks to our big sponsors, Wilcon, Steelscase, Exto, and LuxSpace. They are also part of the National Design Center's Casting Hope program lineup for April and May this year. Now, I'm extremely happy to present to you our panelists for today. Chow Mei, Group Director for Conservation and Urban Design at the URA, Urban Redevelopment Authority, who is also a registered architect with the Board of Architects. Next, we're very privileged to have Yoon Yong Kim, Cluster President of Schneider Electric in Singapore, Malaysia, and Brunei, who brings over 20 years of international experience in the automotive and lighting sector. We welcome our third panelist for today, Richard Payne, whom our live audience will see on this projector screen. Owing to some unforeseen circumstances, Richard joined us virtually today. And we are very grateful for the technological support we have, which enables us to actually converse with him despite the distance. Richard is the Managing Director of Lendlease with over 28 years of property industry experience. He now leads an exciting new mixed-use development at Paya Lebar Quarter in Singapore. Today's panel is moderated by Marcus Liu, CEO of Savills Singapore, who brings a wealth of experience in the real estate industry. I will now hand it over to Marcus to kick off the session. Please help me welcoming our panelists for today. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Valentino. It is very rare, or not very often, we have events like this where we would have a representative from the government sector. We have an energy solutions provider, and then we have views from a global infrastructure and real estate developer in Lendlease. So this will be a collective session of a robust dialogue. I would encourage people who have dialed in, live audience, to raise any questions, which we will take the questions at the end of the session. Today's topic is very controversial to some extent, of the title, No Turning Back. A lot of companies, a lot of experts have already given their views. You have read a lot of reports from third-party providers in terms of what needs to be done on how you work, how you live, and sustainability issues. So today's session just drills deeper into some of those core issues that we've been dealing with. And hopefully out of this session, we are a little bit wiser, a little bit smarter in terms of how we can take this forward. So without further ado, let's jump straight right into the first question for May, if I may ask, is this last 18 months has upended a lot of people's lives, not just at work, at home. From URA's perspective, what has been a major transformation for the organization?
Thanks, Marcus. I think the last year has been a year of many changes for so many of us. I think from a URA's perspective, I think we've seen many shifts in activity patterns across so many different sectors. And we talk about telecommuting that's become so much more prevalent compared to pre-COVID. E-commerce has taken up, food deliveries as well. I think we've also seen many of us go out and enjoy the outdoors. And in fact, I hear from many people that bicycles are out of stock. Right, so I think all these changes will have a very big impact on land use needs and demands. So while it's been a year of disruption, I think as planners, I think we also see this as a very exciting and fascinating time. It's almost offered us almost like we have a window to the future and given us an opportunity to rethink, reimagine how we will live, how we'll work, how we'll commute and be entertained, and how all these aspects will become even more intertwined in the future. So I'd say the biggest takeaway for us is actually the unpredictability of what the future will hold, and that we will actually have to be a lot more flexible and nimble in the way we plan for the future.
Thank you, May. That's a good start. Yoon, if there is one thing as far as transformation in your industry, what would that be?
Yeah, thank you, Marcus. In fact, we are privileged to be in Singapore because, as you saw, I hold accountability as well in Malaysia and Brunei. And of course, there are different countries in the different circumstances. And Singapore has been very privileged in that aspect. Nevertheless, if you see the office environment today, Schneider Electric, it has been very interesting journey and learning every day. Because working virtually as well as physically in the office, the combination of both and using the right and proper tool has been very challenging. In one side, of course, is still we can share contents, technology, and evolve in our projects and progress in our evolution of the journey. But in the same time, in the EQ aspect, the teamwork, the harmony, and sometimes sense of belonging has been a very difficult element for the team. So of course, we try to use as much as possible to make it effective as a team using a virtual environment as well as physical in the office, making sure that we are within the guideline of the government, not occupying more than 50% of our office, having the proper social distancing, as well as every day we have been looking into how to improve the office environment to attract the employees back to the office as well, and how to, of course, consequently interact better with our customers and partners.
Thanks, Yoon. Now, Richard, you've heard what Yoon had to say. Do you share the similar sentiments?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think there's a lot of commonality. The only thing I'd add for ourselves as a developer and operator of assets is we have to be extremely agile through this period because of all the change that's occurred with all the regulations. And when you're managing people and you've got a lot of people at the coalface, you've got to be adaptive to all of that change. But zooming out of that detail, I think similar to the other panelists, it is a great time to reflect. And I think for ourselves, and certainly for me in terms of my personal time, we've invested a lot actually in technology and invested in platforms to really allow us to come out of this period with a really good set of embedded practices and processes, backed by a good IT backbone to help us really improve our productivity. So that's been a good thing, I think, through this period.
Thank you, Richard. Just staying on Lendlease for a while. Lendlease has developed a very successful mixed development up at Paya Lebar. It's called Paya Lebar Quarters. Now, it's a massive project. It's gained a lot of recognition. Now that this pandemic has happened, if you were to rewind things, what would be stuff that you would newly implement in today's new work environment? Like, what would you change?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think fortunately, we've rightly or wrongly, we got most of the basics right. I think, interestingly enough, being a decentralised development has been beneficial. Not being sort of subject to people being afraid of densely crowded public transport and all that sort of stuff. I think we've got good touchless entry, which has been great in the way people arrive at work. We've got good air filtration. And we've got a relatively high proportion of flex solutions in our office, around sort of 15%, which I think is going to grow in its demand going forward. I guess what would we have done differently? I always cringe when I look now at when you enter into our office environments and our retail environments, and we've got these sort of temporary sort of setups for temperature control and managing people as they scan, and it really detracts from the experience, to be honest with you. And I think the reflection there is that, I guess we sort of thought they were all going to be sort of temporary, but the longer this goes on, really you've got to have permanent solutions for these, going forward. So we'll need to integrate that in a better way. And I then think within the office environment, we need to reconfigure the office environment to make it more suitable for how we work now. It's quite difficult when you're in an open plan office to get on video conferences. If there's a lot of people doing that, it's actually quite disruptive. And so we need to be more accommodative in our designs now to reflect and to accommodate this different way of working. Yep.
Right. And C-Suites has been hugely successful the last 2-3 years since implementation. Can you share a bit more about that? And
yes, C-Suite.
See that growing moving forward.
Yeah, so C-Suites was really sort of bringing a corporate user focus into a co-working environment. So C-Suites is flexible working for 50 people and above. So we've got quite large tenancies, but want to exploit that sort of shared working arrangements, but have a very sort of presentable and high spec arrangement. And yes, we're sort of fully leased, which is terrific. It's been good, and we now need to, as I was just mentioning, we need to give that a few tweaks, I guess, for the future, rollout of future C-Suites locations to really accommodate a different way of working, and specifically around people doing video conferencing and providing, suitable facilities for that to be done in a shared environment.
Right. I mean, clearly there is a demand of employees working from home or close to their home. So I suppose this next question is for May. As far as master planning is concerned, in the real estate industry, there has been an increased inquiries for good quality offices, Class A developments, mixed developments at the fringe of CBD, which also goes into the government's tone of reducing carbon footprint, et cetera. But in the recent years, there hasn't been a lot of good development examples to even talk about. I mean, you've got Metropolis as one on the west end, and then you've got PLQ on the east end. But apart from that, there isn't much to discuss. There is a demand, but there's a lack of supply in that fringe zone. So what would QRA's thoughts be? Are you holding back from not releasing more land in those areas, or?
I think we're a little bit more ambitious. We're thinking beyond fringe to maybe, further to our gateways, to the north, to the east, to the west. I think in a way, a lot of our planning fundamentals hasn't shifted, even pre-COVID to now. And in fact, maybe COVID has accelerated that push a little bit more. And I think we're on the right track. We've been talking about adapting a more polycentric development model, creating a more decentralized kind of work cluster arrangements across the island. And within the CBD, trying to increase the mix of users as well. I think with the onset of COVID in the last year, with a lot more people working from home, we are beginning to see that in the suburban malls, we have very healthy visitorship. And then in the CBD, it's been much, much quieter. I think this has really helped to reinforce the importance of creating mixed-use, sustainable precincts. We think that, where people can live and work and do everything they need in one place, whether it's in the polycenters or in the CBD. And we'll really like to continue that push. So I think what we're doing now is within the polycenters, trying to further enhance the range of offerings to make it convenient for people when it comes to amenities and conveniences, but also work options. There are more people working from home and people finding that they can work anywhere, right? It's not just home or office. I think we're beginning to see different type of places evolving to become workplaces as well. You know, cafes, and we've seen co-working spaces even in the shopping centers. And I think hopefully with some of the companies also thinking of creating satellite offices in some of the areas outside the city, that this can give that polycentric model a bit more of that push.
I mean, that would definitely be music to the ears of some of the developers who have dialed in. You know, they're all anticipating for more opportunities for land sales at the fringe of CBD.
Well, I think there's always opportunities. I think we've always been pushing for Jurong. You know, we've made available some parcels in Woodlands. So I think we're really going beyond the fringe. The developers are always looking at fringe because this is convenient, right? But let's take it, you know, let's be bolder. We want to talk about reducing the impact on transport and all that. I think there is a lot of opportunities if you look at Singapore as a whole. Singapore is really not very big, right? East to west, it's half an hour by car. Yeah.
Yep. Now coming to Yun, you spoke briefly about some of the technology that you have implemented. You deal with a vast array of clientele, and they are looking for technology upgrades. So if you have to talk about some of the stuff or some of the expectations and demand from your clients in Schneider Electric's implementation, so what were some of the stuff that you've done?
Yeah, I think it's in a consumer-based point of view, we all face the technology and digital coming to our lives much faster than what we expected, right? If you see who is not using the video system, video meeting system, and so on, right? And that's similarly to the developers as well as the landlord. They have been using technology and digital as a tool to enhance and give as a premium to the end user. I mean, sometimes to the tenant or sometimes to the user itself, employees or people who is occupants of the building. So when I see there are many technologies nowadays that make much more easier and as well as safer and reliable in the sense of building and as well comfort level. So I'll give one of the example. One of the example is what we call the workplace advisor, where just not control the temperature, the lighting system and noise, but control the CO2 level in the certain space of the meeting rooms or certain ambient, where without oxygen or high level of CO2, you will not be as efficient as, or at least you will feel sometimes after lunch, you will be tired and sleepy, right? And this is the things that the facility management team can look into the certain space and give a better space, better ambience, and better meeting rooms as well to be interacting and integrating as well as performing. So this is some of the things that I see more and more of the technology and digital usage by the landlords and developers as well as tenants and the users.
That's a good segue into, you've spoken a lot about technology, but all this comes at a cost. So a lot of industrial peers have ambitions to implement such infrastructure, but there's this elephant in the room that says, okay, it's going to cost me X amount of dollars. What is my ROI? So you are an energy solutions provider. How do you address that? Because we have developers dialing in, so look, I want to go green. I want to embark on the government's agenda to sustainability, reduce carbon footprint, but it's just costing us too much money. Where do we begin? So you have a slew of technology applications. How do you overcome that? How do you address that?
Yeah.
the cost issue?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question because, of course, this is a question for all of us whenever there is investment in place, right? Is about ROI, how ROI can be, and return can be sometimes tangible returns, and sometimes can be intangible returns. And those intangible returns can be, productivity of your employees, or satisfaction, engagement, commitment, and many things relate to that. So yeah, return on investment is a big question. There are two points that I would like to maybe share. One is the axis of how you make it easy investment. So there are many companies nowadays is coming with instead of CAPEX model, is coming with the OPEX model. So the model that allows you to not have the huge investment and do like subscription, yeah? Similar to many telecom companies, mobile smartphones that you have been, experiencing before as a consumer. And the other axis is, of course, depends on your ambition and goal. If your ambition is to give a sustainable as well as a good environment for your employees, you have to pay for that, right? So not only saving energy and having the payback itself, but there are other elements that allow you to give benefits for your stakeholders. And that's the way how we look into, and the sustainable journey, where we look into the digital, when we look into the solutions and softwares that allow you to have certain payback, and certain payback that might be intangible, but it's still sustainable, and contributing not only for the stakeholders, to the society and to the government as well.
Okay. Richard, do you share some of Yoon's sentiments on that? Like, I mean, I'm sure Lendlease is a leader as far as reducing carbon footprint is concerned. I don't know which year you're supposed to be neutrality. Is it 2030?
Totally net or total zero carbon by 2040. Okay. And scope 1 and 2 by 2025. Yep. Okay. Net zero.
And what would Lendlease be doing?
Well, yeah. So I think just a couple of points. I think on the technology, it is actually extremely difficult to put forward your business cases sometimes about the technology investment and get a payback. And sometimes there needs to be a leap of faith. We tend to put forward our investment propositions as a bit of a hypothesis. If we spent this, we believe we could do X and see the gains there, understanding that those gains aren't necessarily certain, but that's the way we're approaching it. And as you get more data and you can triangulate that data, you certainly think you can go and chase some gains. So even for us on PLQ, which is a platinum, a green mark building, very high efficiency, we're still chasing further gains through that triangulation of data. And, as a team, we've put a target of chasing another 400,000 of operational savings by using technology platforms to drive greater efficiency. So it's not insignificant. And, we may not get there, but if we get to 300,000, it's still a fantastic result. Yeah.
I mean, speaking of sustainability, not just from developers' perspective, do you share the sentiments that increasingly there are a lot of end users who are also subscribing the same thought, same methods? So what is your view on that?
Yeah, I think for the end users, I still think there's quite a bit of education required around sustainability and the terminology and what it all means. And I think that with that education, there will be greater awareness and understanding. And when there's greater awareness and understanding, then I think that will lead to greater demand and greater expectation that the offices that we work in, the residential homes that we purchase, have to have, good and responsible environmental outcomes. So I think the first thing there is really about education and awareness, and just getting all the terminology. I don't know about the other panelists or the audience, but there's a lot of terminology out there right now, and some of it's overlapping and can be quite confusing. So I think if we can pull all that together, then we can move forward.
Thanks, Richard. I mean, I guess end users need not be just corporate entities, right? And end users can also be people staying in their homes. Now we've got this drive of employees now, minimum expectation to spend a certain amount of hours at home on flexible and agile work arrangements. Now, clearly, in order to drive towards sustainability, on one hand, you have carbon footprint reduction in core CBD because people are working from home, right? But now there's carbon footprint increase in where people are staying. So from the government's perspective, URA, well, May, I'm calling Miss URA, May. How do you feel? I mean, I'm sure from a master planner's perspective, say, gee, you're looking at the whole macro perspective where more and more people are turning on their power at home, even during daytime, and using air conditioning, turning on their fans. So from your perspective, how do you think that should set policy changes?
Well, I must say, I don't really know the science because that's not really my area. And we're not in the business of calculating energy spent in the CBD versus energy spent at home. But I think that's really just looking at it from one perspective. I think there's also huge energy savings in the past year from telecommuting because of the huge reduction in transport. And I think that's just within Singapore. If you look at it globally, if you look at reduction in international travel as well, and because we've gotten so used to digital communication, I think the way we travel and the need to travel will shift quite fundamentally going forward as well, whether it's for work or for meetings, etc. I think nothing replaces face-to-face interaction. I'm glad we're all here today, but I think we also find that there's a lot of convenience, and time savings, and I guess carbon savings as well that can be gotten, from reductions in telecommuting, not reductions in telecommuting, reductions in traveling.
Well, on the topic of that, I guess the Minister Indrani had a dialogue session with developers, with radars, and fellow agencies, and she propositioned the idea for developers to start thinking on repurposing their assets in core CBD, because now there's a big shift, right? So, and based on some of my experience speaking with some of these developers, they feel that there is insufficient incentives to change, say, an office complex to residential or hotel, because the development charges are too high. Of course, the development charge is determined by the chief valuer, but URA is the administrator. Do you have any thoughts or views on that? I mean, as much as developers want to change it, but it's just not worthwhile because the ROI isn't there.
I think the idea of shifting, what the CBD is something that I think we have been pursuing for some time now, both from a sustainability, self-sufficiency kind of perspective, and also to create a more vibrant kind of environment to attract talent and visitorship. So I think the aspiration to move our CBD from something that has traditionally been a bit more mono-use to something that's been a bit more mixed use is something that I think gets embraced by cities globally. And the pandemic, I think, has really shifted us in this direction. So prior to COVID, we did come up with some incentives. The incentives are intended to encourage conversion of some of the older office buildings into residences or other mix of users, with the intention to really bring in life after hours and also during the weekends. And we think that a mixed-use precinct will really be good to sustain and support the neighborhood. As we can see from COVID, a lot of the shops in the CBD really suffered from the lack of a living population. And while the CBD has been much quieter compared to some of the other suburban areas, even within the CBD, there are quieter areas and less quiet areas. So we compare like Tanjong Pagar to Raffles Place, for example. Tanjong Pagar, because there is living population and residences, you do see a lot more life, in the city, even in the past year. And that is something I think we would like to see much more of in the CBD. So with the incentive scheme, I think there's always a range of different developments in the market, different ages, different mix of users. And at the end of the day, it really has to make business sense, right, to the individual property developers, whether they would like to take this on or not. But I think we have been quite pleased to see quite healthy interest from a number of developers, and we do have ongoing discussions with some of them to talk about how we can make use of it to repurpose some of these buildings into multi-experiential places. I think that's quite exciting because I think apart from the mix of users that we think we're going to get, it's also about maybe reimagining the typology of your typical office buildings. Today, a lot of them are podium, tower, quite inward looking with very little engagement with the street because the city was very much planned for cars. So we're also hoping that through the rejuvenation of some of the older properties, we begin to see a new kind of typology. With every development proposal, there is opportunity to open up the ground floor and provide new open spaces, more walkable environment with more active uses and frontages that connect with the streets and the spaces to engender a much more, people-friendly, community-centric, walkable precinct that will endear itself to people, both as a place for work and play. So I think that's really our aspiration.
I must say that a lot of the government agencies have been very forthcoming and very engaging with the private sector. So that's very, very promising and that's very good. Yoon, would you also say that that's your experience dealing with some of the agencies? Because I know you deal with the government quite a fair bit.
Yeah, I think it's government has been very serious, especially with this new Green Plan 2030 as well. And I do see clearly incentivization in monetary base as well as support base to make sure that we have proper and balanced sustainable evolution in the city and the country. So yeah, my relation and my discussion on the topic related to the sustainability is very clear, supported by the government. And I can tell I was 4 years plus 5 years out of the country and just came back recently. And the topic of sustainability, and this is a totally different aspects compared to 5 years ago. When in the global perspective, Singapore was not taking that element of sustainability as one of the important point in the agenda. Now it's very clear. It's number one point in the agenda, and you can see this in all the ministry working in the similar direction. So for me, is a very good to see this, and technology-wise, solution-wise, we want to contribute to this sustainable journey.
Right. And I was very impressed when you mentioned that your HQ facility out in Kallang will be carbon neutral in August this year.
Yes.
How did you achieve that?
Yeah. So our
apart from using your own tech then.
Yeah, exactly. So just give you the reference. The building is about is 30 years old building. Was a Noel building in the past. Is in the kind of a warehouse industrial zone, where we renovated all of them in the last 3-4 years ago. And with all the technology in place, we were able to bring this building as a BCA Platinum certified in 2019. And then now in the Q3 of this year, we'll go into the carbon neutral. And early next year, we are targeting to go to the super low energy building certification as well. And of course, all this is part of the journey. So actually, May was asking me if it's just one key turn, but actually is several steps for sure. And one thing that I want to share is that even brownfield, not only greenfield, that means old buildings, buildings that is already existent, is able to become sustainable, able to become green.
So it's not all doom and gloom. There's hope.
Yes.
Okay. Now, speaking of the green plan, you mentioned the green plan. So, Richard, I mean, as a developer, what do you hope to see in the green plan? What do you hope for the government to put in detail for industrial players like yourself?
Well, I think the plan's excellent. I mean, you know, while I made the comment there about how far all of the government agencies have come, and when you look at the high-level green plan, it's very comprehensive. And personally, I'm very excited by it. What I would like to see, you know, in that next level of detail is a bit of simplicity, I guess, in how it plays out. As much sort of inter-agency coordination as possible. And of course, I would be remiss if I didn't say some financial assistance from the government to help pump prime things. I mean, as a developer, I feel like that's an obligation that I must fulfil in saying that. But all jokes aside, I'm looking forward to it. You know, the plan's very comprehensive. It's you know, it's cutting across so many different sort of sectors, and you know, 2030 is not that far away. So bring it on. Yeah.
Coming back to Yun, I know you do speak to a lot of people in the government sector. You've probably laid down your wish list in terms of what you want to see in the green plan or ideally like to see. What would those be?
Wow, that's a good question, and thanks for. Yeah, I think it's all journey, as Richard said as well. I mean, we have all the targets every company has, and to be honest, this is not journey of one company or another company, because we have this green plan commitment, which is scope 1, 2, 3. When you go to the scope 3, is basically all the vendors that want to be supplying to the companies that's green needs to be as well green, right? In a very simple terms. So I think the government agenda is very clear, and I think my wish list is that we just pursue what we are driving today, of achieving 2030 in a more sustainable city, more sustainable country, which has a lot of angles. Of course, it's not only building, there are a lot of other elements as well as e-mobility and so on. So I wish that we can continue this journey together, and that needs government, that needs of the private sector, but of course as well individuals. So it's an all combination of these three major pillars to make sure this is a successful journey.
Yes, I do agree. I mean, from my perspective, I think what Richard has earlier mentioned about, all jokes aside, I think there has to be a robust financial scheme where developers could tap on, not free money, but a robust financial scheme and an incentive to hit certain KPIs and hurdles on achieving net neutrality on carbon emissions. And hopefully with a more integrated alliance within the agency departments, where there could be synergies derived from that to achieve what Richard said, the 2030 goals. You know, one of the questions that were raised in our earlier discussions, and this is a question for May, and it goes back to people working from home. And I'm sure you have had your experiences, likewise for yourselves and the people on the floor. As much as employees like to work from home, some of the apartments are actually not conducive for people to work in. You know, some are working out from what they call the shoebox apartments, you know, or they are living with their parents, or they've got their dogs barking. So from a master planner's perspective, do you feel that there is a thrust or a need for the master planner to put some guidelines for developers on restrictions on limiting the size of apartments?
That's an interesting question, and a question that I think we do ask ourselves from time to time. I think as a policymaker, for us, it's always, you know, a balance between deciding how much to regulate and how much to leave to the market. And I think with the shoebox kind of developments that you've alluded to, I think it's really a function of both price and demand. I think when it first came to the market, we were quite surprised at how much people were willing to pay for, you know, not very big unit. But I think size is also relative. If you compare a size apartment here to size in Hong Kong, people will think that, you know, maybe shoebox is not so small after all, right? So it's relative, and it's, I guess, a lot to do as a function of people's, I guess, preferences, what they can, and to some extent, how much they can afford as well. So I think in the past, we have started to put some regulations outside of the city when not so much, you know, to kind of shape it, to try to regulate the market, but because we were starting to see that when a plot of land that is planned for X number of units suddenly double in size or double the number of units, it does have an impact on the local residential community and to the traffic as well. So I think some guidelines were then put in place to guide an average kind of unit size. But, you know, coming back to your question on current work arrangements and whether that will give rise to bigger apartments, that's an interesting question, and something that we'll definitely like to see evolve. As to whether or not we should regulate, maybe I should ask Richard.
My preference would be for less regulation, please, May. But yeah, I think the market will dictate. I think a lot of, you know, recent launches I've seen, you know, they've got quite flexible spaces now emerging in a lot of the apartment configurations for you know, home studies and things like that. And I think, you know, the shared facilities that a lot of residential developments have may morph to include shared facilities for working as well. So I think these will naturally form themselves, and purchasers can make those decisions about how important they are for them, and use their spending power accordingly. But I think it will change. I mean, I think, as we were mentioning before, you know, there was a sort of sense when COVID first came that, okay, we've got a year of this and it's going to go away. I think there's now more of a slumped shoulders that we're in for the long haul here, and that we may need solutions for the longer term. And if it's not COVID, it's going to be something else down the track. So, yeah, I think there will be changes, and, you know, hopefully the development community and the government with HDB housing will facilitate those changes for the users.
Yeah, absolutely. If I may add on, I think we are starting to see, you know, more interesting hybrids, so interest for more hybrid type of developments that will allow for work and live at the same time. I mean, despite the intrusion that we don't really like in our lives. I think that's going to give rise to very creative solutions and new products in the market. And I think it links back to one of the things I talked about earlier, about being flexible and adaptable. To be able to accommodate some of these new trends. I think that'll be quite exciting.
Okay. I mean, this is a good segue to one of the questions from a virtual online audience, and it sort of relates to the earlier question that I had. But it's all well and good talking about the private residential side. So this is a question from the online audience. With the question is, with increasing overlaps of what the home serves, family, social time, home office, and potentially healthcare, public housing needs to be able to handle these demands in terms of unit sizing. The current trend seems to be the opposite, with smaller and smaller public housing units. Can URA provide some insight on this?
Short answer is URA is not equals to HDB. No, I don't really have an answer, but I think you know, we have very unique constraints in Singapore. We are an island city-state, you know, not very big, with very scarce land resources. And one of the things we've done quite well, I would like to think, is in the way we have tried to balance the use of land, and also the way we have pursued high-density living, but still, you know, providing for a very livable environment in the space of the public realm, whether it's provision of amenities, parks, open spaces. That's been very well appreciated by people as well, you know, during this COVID period, both for respite and recreation. So at the end of the day, I think it's about balance, but I think it's also about always trying to stay relevant to the needs of the changing population. So what we have today is an evolution of various lifestyle changes and demands. But I'm sure with shifting arrangements in the way we live and work, we may see new typologies evolve as well in the future.
Okay, thank you, May. Now this other question, again from an online audience, is it's for Richard and Yun. Like in your experience or your work processes, what do you feel are the biggest forces working against you in achieving your sustainability goals? What are the challenges? Apart from financial assistance, I've heard Richard say that already.
Yeah.
Do you want to go first, Jim?
Yeah, Richard. Okay, thank you. So in fact, when I see the challenge, I'm looking into the perspective of the whole stakeholders, not only Schneider itself, right? I think is the biggest challenge that maybe you said already on a part of that, but it is the investment, right? Is how to invest in technology and how to get the payback, and this is especially when you are in the corporate environment, right, is not individual, right? Sometimes for individuals, because of your well-being, you might invest in technology that you want to benefit in the well-being. Sometimes you don't really think of your ROI, right, at home. I think is everybody has their family, not everything is ROI, right? But of course, as company, you need some ROI explanation. And that I think is the biggest challenge. That's why we see a lot of movements as well. The companies going from the CAPEX to OPEX. And when I maybe explain a little bit more on the CAPEX to OPEX is that, any investment is done in a way that you don't have the full investment in T0 times 0. And then basically you pay subscription, you pay monthly basis along certain periods of time. It can be a few years, it can be 10 years, depending on the equipment as well as the technology. So that's, I think, is the way to enable some of the difficulties to overcome the major obstacle, which is the investment part. Aside that, I mean, if you see, depending on the country, there are countries that sustainability is not in the agenda of the country yet. And of course, that is very difficult. But whenever it is in the agenda of the country, then I don't see many obstacles. I think it's just about the speed of the journey, how fast or how slow we go into the journey, depending on the resources, depending on the incentive, depending on the mindset and the culture of the population as well.
So you feel that we're going to get there somehow? It's just in between, there may be hurdles.
Sure.
And to impede that trajectory.
Surely.
Okay.
Surely.
Richard, do you feel the same way?
Yeah, look, I'm very optimistic about, sort of moving forward. But, in terms of the question and the challenges, it's always around financial challenges and coming up against, individuals, be they in your investment committee or if they're, investors who just want to look at things through the lens of the financial return, and sometimes can't project themselves, 5 or 10 years down the track to understand a relevancy discussion or a financial implication discussion or where the market may be, and that can be quite a challenge. If you want to get approvals and you want to get things done. So that's the biggest thing for me, is trying to pitch the story and to try and pitch what we're doing now as the solution to where you want to be in a future world. Yeah.
Thanks, Richard. Without neglecting the audience in the room, I would like to ask if anyone has any question that they would like to ask the experts here. There's a mic that will go around. If there's any questions from the floor. If you could identify yourself and yeah.
Yeah, hi, I'm Duncan. I work for a company called Concourse, and we specialize in project managing the design and fit out of primarily retail and F&B spaces, but also sometimes workplace. We were at a workplace yesterday, and we were brought in because we are very much involved in sustainable fit out, but also end of life. And I guess it's a question to Richard and you, Marcus, as you manage office spaces and so on. At the end of life, typically with workplace, the landlord demands that everything is reinstated, right back down to the floor slab, the ceilings, all the furniture, everything's removed. And we were at this workplace yesterday. We were brought in to see if we could salvage some of the materials before they end up in landfill. And it's quite shocking to see how much stuff is going to landfill. Like, we're talking hundreds of desks, hundreds of chairs, beautiful marble that's been put in there, has only been there for 5 years, and so on. And also all the electronic waste and everything. All of it's going to landfill. And so if we're looking at redesigning the workplace in a time of change, is that something that is being considered maybe from your clients, but also from Richard's point of view?
Yeah.
Richard, you want to shoot first?
Yeah, I'll go first this time. Why? I'm keen to go on this one. Firstly, Duncan, I totally agree, and completely on the same page with just how wasteful that is. And particularly with the shorter leases here in Singapore, a lot of the leases are signed for 3-5 years, and it's a very short cycle for materials to be thrown out. So for us, we see the solution to that is co-working options. So the product that we have, which is C-Suites, really you're providing a fit out that can be reused by many tenants over an extended period, and getting a far more usable life out of the facilities that you provide, together with sharing the facilities of meeting rooms and function rooms, which is a much more efficient solution, because a lot of the things that are built in the first place, the utilisation rates are extremely low. So the counter to it, and where we sort of see the future, is maybe in flexible environments. And Lendlease has voted with their feet there. So we're a sub-tenant within C-Suite. So our head office is now just a tenancy within C-Suites. And when we leave C-Suites one day and go to maybe another C-Suites location, that fit out will remain for others to then move in, and we can get much higher utilisation rates. So that's a very important path for sustainable outcomes, as far as I'm concerned, is to minimise exactly what you've articulated. Yep.
Well, Duncan, thank you for the question. I totally agree with what you said. And I must add that landlord must really dislike that fit out for you to discard everything. But all jokes aside, in the last 20 years, Singapore developers and landlords have been very, very stringent, because the space may suit one company, may not suit the other. So it's not fit for purpose for the other group that's coming in. So more often than not, you see landlords taking the easy way out. Maybe not easy way out is the wrong term to use, but a more convenient way is to have the tenant reinstated to bare condition. You are right in the sense that there's a lot of wastage that's going on. That's why in the last 5 to 8 years, there's this change in mindset and mentality. Not all landlords, but increasingly we are witnessing an increasing number of landlords who are prepared to accept a fully fitted office, and they will market it on that basis. So it's still not across the board yet. So we've come from a stage where it used to be none. You have to really bring it down to bare shell. So we're now at a stage where we can consider to probably moving forward to, yeah, no problem. As long it's very usable, I will continue to market it for you. But sure, you have to retain a certain reinstatement sum. It could be a reduced sum, but there is this dialogue that's ongoing. So I think there's an evolution of the whole process. And moving forward, I think there'll be more of that, especially when landlords are increasingly, like Richard, himself, pressured internally and by external factors to put in place the right regime on fit out when it comes to meeting carbon emissions, zero carbon emissions targets. So perhaps maybe from Lendlease perspective, in the fit out manual, they may prescribe certain things that needs to be done, that this has to be recycled, that has to be recycled. Sure, it will cost more, but talking about the point on cost, right? So I think everybody has to play their part. The developer has to play their part. Hopefully government agency can provide some financial assistance. And I think the end user also must play their part in contributing to that cost element so that the whole ecosystem can thrive. Yeah. So any questions from the floor? Again, please state your name and your organization, please.
My name is Stephen Louis, perpetual student. I appreciate some of the insight that the speaker has given us in terms of what is happening in this environment. But I'd like to push that further, and to do so, allow me to just to set up the question. We can look back and see some of the changes that the Industrial Revolutions had caused in terms of disruption and construction. So in the first Industrial Revolution, we had steam. In the second one, we had electric. The third was the internet. And now we are in the midst of the fourth Industrial Revolution, the nanotechnology. In each cases, jobs and lives have been totally disrupted and wiped out, but replaced by other jobs. So for example, the horse and carriage, people who tended them were gone in place of automobiles. Orchestra players and musicians in theaters were gone in place of movies that had sound. So in looking at our current industrial revolution, we can see now some of the changes that's been made. So at Changi Terminal 4, for example, Schneider had put in smart technologies with kiosks, replacing actual people to check you in. So under the heading of no turning back and forging ahead, are there others jobs that you can foresee that's on your tables that you haven't yet divulged to us that we can anticipate and see, because there is no turning back?
It's a very big question.
Maybe to me? Okay. Yeah, of course, I am not expert to share all the potential jobs that might create. I can see in my environment, actually new jobs that has been created, and the importance of the jobs that has been, popped up in many aspects, not only in Singapore, but globally. So, of course, we are going to the digital journey, and in digital journey, and a lot of need and demand on the software engineers, application engineers. So we see a lot of jobs related to that angle. As you might see every day, I mean, even in Singapore, very clear, you see a lot of gaming companies as well, right? So you see more and more people into how you create the software, how you create the game, as well as how you digitalize things. Then you need to create expertise in that area. And then, of course, all these digital for digital is not just for digital sake of digital, but it's about data. So how you manage the data. And then, of course, we can talk about data storage, but as well as the data intelligence, artificial intelligence on the data. So all this journey that I see, even in our company, in the journey of the digitalization, we see jobs going into that direction rather than simple engineer, which is electrical engineer, that has been our base of the fundamental job capacity that we have, the majority of the team. But nowadays, more and more software. That's what I see in our journey.
I'd just like to take Yoon's point a bit further. I mean, Stephen, that's a great question. It's been asked quite a number of times, where technology has replaced manpower. And I think on the question of sustainability and no turning back, a classic example would be the job subsidy scheme that the government has provided, I mean, billions of dollars, right? Over the course of 12 months. And those funds were utilized to help sustain businesses and keep employees gainfully employed. But if I may add, I mean, since May is here, that perhaps the government could have also thought about utilizing some of those funds to create a new industry. Because it's all well and good talking about infrastructure, implementation, and technology. But you need to create a whole new industry, hiring people to upgrade lift systems. We're just not talking about high-skilled stuff, right? Even the low end, we need to employ mechanics, not just engineers, to implement and install virtual facial recognition modules in commercial complexes or shopping malls. So this thrust and this momentum to achieving sustainability goals and an advent of technology, I don't feel it's going to eliminate jobs. I think with the right application, it's going to create more jobs. I think both the government and the private sector just needs to identify where the gaps are and apply it correctly.
If I may add, I saw one of the video was for a question, similar question to Bill Gates and Warren Buffett, and they were doing a seminar and workshop at University of Columbia, New York. And the question was, what you would do if you are young again, right? And there are pillars that he mentioned very clearly. There are three pillars. One is biotechnology. And the other one is about artificial intelligence. And the third one is about energy. Those are the three things that will have a lot of demand in the world, and they would do something similar in that category. So maybe try to answer your part of your question.
Well, it's now past 5 p.m. We will be extending the session to 5:30. For both the live and the virtual audience, please feel free to stay on. If you'd like to join us, please keep the questions coming. There is another online question, and that is for May and Yoon. How do you think Singapore is doing in terms of energy consumption? Very technical. Where are we right now in comparison to where we should be in the next 5 years? Okay, there are three questions here, so I'll just stop at question number 2. Okay, so first question, how are we doing as a country in terms of energy consumption? Where are we right now, and what do we hope to achieve in 5 years? Maybe
I'm going to defer to you. It's a very technical question. I have to admit that I'm not really an expert.
Yes, I mean, you are energy solutions provider, right? So it should be the tip of your fingertips, energy consumption.
Yeah.
And I'll just say I agree.
Yeah. I can talk about megawatts, gigawatts, but I think the most important thing is, is the consumption of energy today. I mean, as in Singapore, has been, of course, many of the part has been imported. Is not resource from the own country. So we all know we have this energy dependency, right? So there are people asking the question, why we don't put all the solar in the whole Singapore, and then we don't have to buy energy anymore. But in fact, even if we have all solar panels in the whole surface of Singapore, we might not get to the level that we are using today, maybe in the future, I don't know. But today, most probably not. So this is, of course, the balance of the supply and demand that we have in Singapore. And I think the journey of the Green Plan is very clear. We want to reduce our level of consumption. It's not only bringing the renewable energy as maybe we are talking about solar, but as well, a lot of things relate to hydrogen as well as nuclear. I think those are the three axes of investigation, but is beyond that. I mean, one is the source, but it's about the usage. And as we are going today, I mean, the trend, it shows that we're gonna use more and more energy, right? So basically, that's why we have to go into the plateau level first, and to enable us to start to decrease as well. So that's the journey until 2030. So reduction-wise, I think is everybody knows in the Green Plan very clearly. I think that everybody in the company-wise, corporate-wise, they have a different targets and different commitments. For instance, in our case, we have a commitment to reduce 50% very clearly. As a country, of course, we will not be able to reduce 50%. So that, I think, is the journey where we are in. So in one side is the contribution of the source, the energy matrix, how you work with the energy matrix. And the other one is about how we use in a more smart way, intelligent way, and efficient way. I think that is the two journey that we have.
Thanks, you.
I hope I answered the question without numbers and.
Now, before we take that next question online, I just want to check whether there's any other questions from the live audience. No? Okay. There's, this question is just beeping in my face, so I have to ask this question. So moving forward, I mean, we all know that we are now into phase 2, okay? On the topic of no turning back. And this is a question for both Richard and Yun. The government has reversed to phase 2, encouraging no more than 50% back in the office. Some employees prefer to work from home 100% of the time. And few people prefer to have flexible work arrangements in the office full time. How can organizations like yours resolve the current dilemma? With an empty office environment due to a leasing period as part of the OPEX, which many sectors are finding challenging now. So you practically have an empty office. You know, if you were to allow your staff, provide full flexibility, you know, I have 5 years left in my lease, what am I going to do with it? So maybe Richard, you want to take a stab at that?
Sure, I can talk maybe from personal experiences. I think we've probably all gone through shifts in our own thinking around the new ways of working. Personally, you know, it was very disruptive to start working from home. We started to learn about the new technology. And then once we got used to that, we actually sort of thought, actually, it's not too bad. You know, and you began to think maybe I'm actually more productive working this way. And then as time went on and you got lonelier and lonelier and craved more sort of human contact, and the opportunity was to then go back to the office. Certainly for myself, I was very energized by that, getting back, seeing my colleagues, bumping into them. And I found that whole process of getting back into the office very energizing, and just reminding myself of why I actually like going into the office and interacting with people. And this latest sort of reversion back to phase 2 is a bit of a blow, to be honest with you, because it's sort of like you saw a little bit of the future, but it was then taken away. But look, my take is that there is a lot of inertia in us all when things change, and we get used to the new circumstances, and then we go, okay, that's great. But then we start to reminisce about the things that we used to like. And look, I think the future will be one where every company will be different, and countries will be different, but maybe in the Singapore circumstance, I think we've learned to live and work flexibly. And to the extent that employers, you know, are okay with that flexibility, I think we all will find a new way of working, you know, that suits our own personal circumstance, if we've got children and all those other complications in life. You know, for, you know, where I think things are polarizing for ourselves, Lendlease, is probably 3 days in the office and potentially 2 days at home. But, you know, there will be a degree of discretion for our staff and a high level of trust. but I think that's probably where we'll end up. But I certainly don't think the office is dead by any stretch of the imagination, and I think it'll probably come back quite strongly as people remind themselves what they really enjoy about working in teams and within groups and interacting and all of those casual bump-ins that we have with people that we haven't seen for quite a while. Yeah.
Yeah, Richard. I mean, thanks for that. I couldn't agree more. As far as the solutions are concerned, because there is no one-size-fits-all policy. It varies from country to country, and culturally in Singapore is very different to people working in Sydney. So,
yep.
So I guess from the observations and the experience from my perspective dealing with end users, a lot of them have been quite quick to reduce space, to reduce costs, to provide flexibility. But I agree with Richard totally that when more vaccinations are being rolled out, when people feel safe, and people feel that there's a need to be socially integrated, they will come back to the office. Maybe not 100% of the time. So that's why the fit out, the spatial design will morph into an environment where it is conducive for people to interact, to have engagement dialogues and stuff like that, as opposed to just coming back and stay at your desk. So that I feel is going to come back in a strong way to the later part of 2021 and moving on to 22. Yeah.
Maybe if I may add, interesting that we just implemented what we call a contingency plan, segregation plan, Group A, Group B, from last Wednesday onwards. And it's difficult to make people work from home. Actually, 3 months ago, was the opposite. In the beginning of the year, when the government was a little bit more releasing on the number of group of people, then was difficult to pull the team back to the office. So this is a big exercise. I think one of the points that he mentioned, or she mentioned, is about how you engage your team to make sure that when you bring back to the office, is still for the ones that prefer to work more from home, to be still engaged and feel comfortable. And the opposite happens the same, that some of them prefer to stay in the office because, hey, see, my AC is not working properly at home, and if I stay home, my wife or my spouse always asks something, then I cannot do it, and this and that. And then there are a lot of elements that some people prefer to stay in the office. So I think this engagement is a constant discussion with my HR on how we engage and commit our team to bring back or to make a proper segregation. But what I would tell you is globally, we as a company, we already adopted what we call the 3+2. So 3 days working from office, 2 days working from home is a global standard for us, regardless the country. And of course, always the government guideline of the country supersede our internal corporate guidelines. So that's how we have been practicing so far.
Thank you, Yun. I think we've almost reached the end of today's session. I'm just checking to see if we have any other questions. There are still a few, but I think it's thank you for the guests that's been here today. Sorry, there's one more question from the floor. Oh, sorry, Duncan. Yes, I didn't see you.
This is the last question. Are you finding that because it's going to probably move to, I'm hearing this a lot, 2 to 3 days working at the office, that you need a lot less floor space for your actual offices? No point paying crazy rents if you don't need the space and people are only coming in for 2-3 days a week. And if that's the case, is there going to be less need for so much office space here in Singapore? And if that's the case, what are you going to do with the rest of the space?
Yeah, it's difficult for me to say about Singapore overall, but of course, I can share my experience of our office, where our office was already a flexible office. So the capacity of the office was close to 70% of our population. So 1,300 people there, but we had a capacity of 800, 900 people. So it was already a flexible office in the first place. And the second thing is that there are some of the global roles or the regional roles that people was working out of different place. We have as a global company, MNC, we defined the multi-hub approach. So we had a hub in Hong Kong, hub in Singapore, in Paris and Boston. And those 4 areas, we used to have global teams around. And some of the team was running the regional of Asia actually out of a different place, maybe from Hong Kong or maybe from even Paris. So recently, we have to bring these people to close to the customer. So to be honest, the number of employees not reducing is even increasing. But that doesn't mean that we are taking more space because we have a flexible office, right? So that has been our experience. Of course, every company has different situation. And one another topic that I recently in the co-working space company, very big co-working space company was telling me that they are in the CDB and they are telling me very clearly is increasing. The demand is increasing. They're having more and more customers. They are almost getting over capacity themselves. So I think there are different cases. Maybe somebody else want to take in on the bigger perspective.
I mean, this question was asked of me yesterday by another prominent developer, and they wanted to know whether if there's a reduction in area requirements because of people changing to 3:2 or 2:3, whichever ratio that they want. The trend right now, it's a lot of knee-jerk reaction that we are seeing. And primarily it's down to costs. But there are a lot of companies as well who are a bit more progressive. And they know that this is an interim situation that they're in. And once things improve, there is going to be a demand for office space further down the track. So for now, there will be some pain. We will see companies giving up space. It will probably create a situation where reduce costs, reduce area. When things improve, then they feel that they're out of space, and then they start taking space from different floors and non-contiguous and stuff like that. So that presents another problem as well. So I think there's a lot of conversations happening between landlords and end users on flexi workspace arrangements, which stuff that's been implemented by Lendlease and C-suites, and there are a lot of providers out there. So increasingly, there are a lot of developers who are offering that flex and core arrangement to some of these users. So hopefully that could also be a solution. Okay. It's coming to a close. Perhaps we could have May provide us with some closing thoughts from URA's perspective or your own personal perspective as far as no turning back is concerned on the issue of hybrid working, work from home, and sustainability. What are your closing thoughts on this?
I think actually, we've been talking a lot about digitalization and how that's taking over many aspects of the way we were used to living our lives. But maybe one thing that stands out and it's clear that will not move, I think, maybe sharing more from a more personal and human perspective, is that as human beings, I think we all need social interaction and we thrive on social interaction, despite all the, safe management measures that's been put in place. And perhaps that's why people have also been, not paying heed to it sometimes. But I think fundamentally, I think what's come out of this situation has also reinforced the need for humans to interact with one another. So when you talk about the impact to workspace design and even retail experiences and all that, at the end of the day, there is still that, experiential aspect that will remain very important, and if not more so. when we talk about workplaces, it's no longer just a place for work, but it's also for collaboration, for interaction, for the exchange of ideas, team building, culture forming. Likewise, in neighborhoods, I think the role of public spaces will remain very important, and even more so, again, as community spaces for respite, for recreation, but also for people to come together and to have that sense of being part of a community. When we talk about retail as well, there's been maybe less of a demand for physical retail stores, but people are shifting to experiential retail, right? What are the kind of experiences you want to be in? If you look at the Citibank in Orchard Road, the new one is the Wealth Hub. So I think the banking experience is an office and a garden, the kind of experience you offer. So I think that to me is the interesting aspect of all this. Despite all the digital and the automation, I think it's the human, one-to-one social interaction that will not be replaced. And I think that's very important for us to still remember. And I think that's very important for us. We think about, creating livable and also lovable cities.
Thank you, May. Yeah. With that, allow me to bring this session to a close. I would like to thank the audience over here for attending this session, and the online virtual audience who have dialed in. Thank you very much. And last but not least, to Chow Mei from URA, Yoon from Schneider Electric, and Richard Payne from Lendlease. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you so much. This was extremely insightful session. Thank you so much for coming and for your time. Well, wow, I wish we could stay a bit longer. I can think of a few more questions, but anyway, we have to go soon. If you haven't already, do check the exhibition downstairs on level 1, which is called The Office Disrupted. Before we wrap everything up, I would love to call up our Narita Chia, the co-founder and director of Paperspace Asia. Please, if you can come up and give some remarks, closing remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Valentina. Wow, 5 weeks just kind of blitzed by that fast. And we are finally here, the finish line in sight. We seemed like yesterday when we just launched The Office Disrupted with confetti and 50 people together, and a great way to obviously conclude the whole topic and what the future holds for us. In the last course of the 5 weeks, we've received over 5,000 visitors here at the National Design Center. We're very proud to have hosted 4 panel series with over 400 attendees, both physical and online, and 40 client engagements from the private and public sector have come here. Clearly, this topic is very much aligned to a lot of top-level, top-line thoughts across individuals as well as organizations. It's been a whirlwind for sure, and it would not have been possible without our partners, sponsors, speakers, moderators, and most importantly, supported beyond all this from the Design Singapore Council. So thank you. Amidst such uncertain times, we chose to boldly experiment with new formats while working within safety regulations, conducted an exhibition, tried a webinar, tried a physical plus online exhibition. And thank you, Richard Payne, for creating another version of a possible hybrid where you can bring a speaker, so a third dimension to it. And if there's one thing that hybrid future looks like, I think it's to constantly think about or anticipate the unexpected and just deal with it as it comes, has been the biggest takeaway for me and the team. We've heard and we've been very privileged to hear across different expertise from different vast fields to kind of really look at the subject matter across so many spheres. And as we kind of try to think about new ways of how working and our future life will impact Singapore's future landscape, how we individually look at work life, how organizations are going to embrace a new future. I think it's important to think about it in 4 different perspectives, right? What's driving the fourth industrial revolution, as what Steve called out, is this big change that technology and perhaps the pandemic has brought about. So let's look first about business that have had to change and have to kind of move forward. And in that, how then do we bring our employees and our workforce to kind of grapple with that and move along with that process? And then only circling back in terms of understanding or redefining the new purpose of the office, as Richard says, is not dead, but perhaps the purpose of it has changed. And I think that, as you take 3 steps backwards, will then certainly impact wider conversations of developments, urban planning. But I think what's really, really encouraging as we look forward is the possibility of a much more integrated importance of well-being. I think that has surfaced so bright and strong in all the conversations and perhaps become a greater focus for all of us. And really now more than ever, I think it's a critical call to think about the new generation of workplaces as work and our environment evolve, and how do we redesign them in a time that's ever changing. So where would you like to be in this conversation? How are we harnessing our imagination to look for new solutions and possibilities? How can we better practice values of empathy, collaboration, and empowerment as driving forces of the office of the future? So let's remain nimble and innovative as we pace towards a hopeful tomorrow. Across industries, let's encourage each other to be on the lookout for opportunities in moments of crisis, and never hesitate to shift perspectives and lead change. Thank you everyone for joining us in the last 5 weeks, and I'll hand this time now to Valentina to bring this to a close.
Thank you very much, Narita. Before we all go, we would really appreciate if you could take some time. Oh, sorry, I'll take my mask off. Okay, you can hear me better. So before we all go, would you please take some time to take a short survey? There's a QR code to your left and to your right. So to your left is this a quick survey, and to your right is the information about the other programming at the National Design Center. Thank you so much again for your time today, and have a very, very lovely evening. Take care. Bye-bye.